Everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Outlier podcast. Today we've got Kevin with us. Hi, Kevin. How you doing?
Good morning, good afternoon.
Good morning, good afternoon. Absolutely, sir. Absolutely glad to have you join us today. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. Appreciate you bringing me on the podcast today.
Absolutely. This is the first podcast that I'm doing in an Uber, so a brand new experience of it, even for me, but it all sounds fun. So again, Kevin, thank you for joining in. A quick introduction who Kevin is. Kevin is one of the, I would say, bankers who turned into becoming a credit union executive. I've been following Kevin for the last almost couple of years. Amazing individual who led transformation across multiple financial services, focused on transformation across product, channel, and scaling it throughout, right? So after spending a bunch of years in larger banks, moving to regional banks, then to fintechs, now Kevin has took up a role of leading Travis Credit Union. He's the CEO of Travis Credit Union, and he breathes credit union nowadays, and he's in love with that. So Kevin, I don't know if I was half able to do a proper introduction for you, sir, but in case you want to add something, feel free.
I think you covered perfectly, especially from while being in an Uber.
Yeah, that's a caveat that everyone needs to have. That there are rooms of improvement, but let's not be harsh about it. Cool, Kevin. Let's start this with one question I'll ask you right now. You leading a credit union, running the entire show, that takes a lot of effort. That's a lot of effort for a large credit union. What keeps you going?
For me, what I love about any job, particularly leading a credit union, is you get to see the byproduct of your work, right? So at Travis, we cover Northern California. For those that aren't familiar, we have 260,000 members. And when you come to work every single day or every week or every month, you can start to see, hey, we're working on this. And then you can see the improvement. So you can see the way I think about it is particularly the role of the CEO, right? It's the inverted pyramid, right? I exist, we hire great people, build great processes, great tools, and then they serve our members. And so what you get to see is this direct impact you have on your communities, your members, and your team. And to me, that's incredibly rewarding.
Understand? Yeah, so that makes sense. Uh, One obvious question which I want to ask you, right? Both of us have a similar background of big FIs, consulting, and coming to credit unions. So, Kevin, why credit unions? I mean, what made you come to credit unions?
Yeah, it's actually been a fairly lengthy journey. So, in one of my roles, I had the great privilege to lead the retail side of a 25 and $50 billion regional bank. And when I reflected back on, that role, what I loved about it is I loved that you could directly measure or see the impact you made. You could, whether it be on team, customers, or members in the community. And so when it
Mhm.
came to career progression, I had thought to myself, where else in the financial services sector is there a direct connection with my experiences and my backgrounds? So there were two that were pretty logical. A fintech, which I got the great fortune to do for a little bit of period of time, and the other one was credit unions. And honestly, I started thinking about that probably 7 years ago. And it took, now I've been here for 3 years, but it was a long journey to understand credit unions. What's their purpose? How does the community come together? And to build a network so that when you have the opportunity, in my case, that you understand what are the great things you bring to the table, but what are those things that are really sacrosanct to the credit union community? And how do I make sure I honor those while also driving change? So to me, it was this really perfect blend of those two worlds coming together.
Understand. So, I think you have a similar reason because you wanted to see, I think, a couple of things. One is seeing an overarching impact, right? From, for the lack of better words, from origination to fulfillment across the entire consumer life cycle. Plus, second, tied with the community impact, right? Seeing what you that I mean, we never had that kind of an experience earlier through credit unions because it was always focused towards running P&Ls. I mean, yeah, right now we are running P&Ls, but P&Ls are a different way, not just earning money, but it's more of, I would say, for the lack of better words again, having impact on the communities that we live in, right? So I think that's perfectly taken. I mean, I think it will take me a few years still from move from consulting to credit unions. I'm very close, like you. I'm very close. Might be a couple of more years, but great to hear a perspective from someone who's come from larger banks, right? Uh, okay, I already talked about your journey very briefly, but we want to talk about your journey so far. What did you do in the initial days, and eventually, how did you come to credit unions?
Sure, absolutely. So, journey-wise, from a career, um, in hindsight, my career ends up looking a bit like a portfolio of skills. So I was very fortunate. I started my career at one of the large national financial institutions, and I actually started in marketing. I started in quantitative side of marketing. So how do you think about control groups? How do you test? How do you learn? And that ended up being a really good insight for me that I love this interesting intersect of kind of what are member or customer needs, what are different things you could test and try, and then how do you measure the outcome? And if you think about financial services, or honestly any business, it's all about iteration, trying things and learning. And so from there, I moved from marketing, I got to do, member segmentation, and then I got to move into product management. And that led me to other regional and community banks, both from a how do you drive growth. And then I got to do a turnaround role for a troubled financial institution, which was super cool. And then had that opportunity where I got to move from wearing the corporate hat to wearing the line hat, where I got to own a full vertical. And that challenges you in a way that I can't quite describe. So really from a growth perspective, in terms of me learning more about myself, my style, one day you go from having 30 to 60 corporate team members, and then now you have 3,000 people in 8 or 9 states. It's just a really different, how you have to lead is very different. So that then led me to lots of M&A work, and then ultimately kind of to a fintech, and then to a credit union. So in hindsight, it looks, right, what does it look like? It looks like a ladder. It was not a ladder. It was many ups, many downs, many sideways, many mistakes. And then as you kind of grow forward, kind of looks like it all kind of comes together. But at the time, I couldn't have predicted starting in direct marketing at a large financial institution would lead to a day where I got to run a company. So that's kind of been my journey along the way.
Interesting. I mean, I didn't know that you come from marketing. So the first phase of my career, very similar. I came from marketing sciences. So I used to work for Accenture and something called Accenture Interactive in the agency consulting wing of Accenture, doing exactly the same thing: customer segmentation, propensity models, MMX, attribution, exactly the same thing. Interesting. I didn't know that this about you. Great. Now, coming to credit unions, right now, all of us know that this ecosystem is growing fast, growing quick, but there is transformation that is needed across the consumer life cycle, right? From your onboarding to the way how you service a member. So, how do you define transformation for the credit union in your 2 cents? Because you came to Travis and now you're transforming the entire credit union from grounds up. So, what is your experience been so far, and what have you been doing?
Yeah. So I think first, we use the word, all of us do, myself included, the word transformation in a very broad sense, and by definition, it is. So how I think about it is you're taking an organization from wherever it's starting from, and you're trying to move as fast as possible to where you want it to go. So transformation could be very different based on the size of your organization, the history of it, and the trajectory. So, I think about it as it's shifting the pace of change in an exponential way. That's how I think about transformation. Yes, it might include using fancy things, whether one day we get into quantum computing or certain, agentic AI, but that what you're really talking, it always comes back to kind of who's your audience? What are you trying to do with them, for them? And then how do you get there? So for me, transformation is all about taking some place from where it is, figuring it out, how does it align to the mission? And then how do you increase the pace of that change to deliver on it for your customer, or in the case of credit unions, for your members? One of the other interesting things, and it might tie into the next question, is for credit unions, given your history, your member-owned cooperative nature of things, is that each of them are solving for very different things. When you're a publicly owned company, you're governed by earnings per share. It's a quarterly thing you do, and there's great things about that. There's also some downsides. In credit unions, some credit unions are focused on growth, and they're focused on growth to deliver more value to more members and impacting more communities. For other credit unions, their decision on their journey is less about growth and more around maybe keeping the same size, but doing things differently within them. So that's one of the bigger dynamic differences I notice within credit unions is some are focused on growth, which means more members, which means getting larger, and others are focused more on optimization. And there's not a right or wrong for each of those. Each organization has its own hypothesis and thesis about what it's trying to do, but there are meaningful differences about go-to-market for credit unions.
Yeah, I think you put it exactly the way how it should be, Kevin. I mean, I don't have an answer. I mean, I don't have a response to what you talked about because it was exactly in place, right? Uh, Moving on to the next. I mean, I'm a data geek, so I talk about data analytics every single time. How do you think data and analytics is changing the entire ecosystem?
Yeah. I think so. It is absolutely going to transform the system. I think the hardest thing for any institution, whether a financial services organization, i.e. a credit union or a national bank, is based on how the organizations were put together, based on their technology stacks or capabilities. Data often is, as everybody hears about, in silos. And so there's a lot of work to be done around connecting it to use it then to better the member experience. So what I think you see in the credit union space is a ton of work on building foundational capabilities to then use that information to do more with it. And the benefit of a credit union based on their mission is you're focused more of that on how do I provide insight, personalization, segmentation, and experiences. And you're seeing a huge amount of effort in the credit union system to deliver that for your members, and the bottom line impact it has on value to member and then impact in your community. So I would say some credit unions are farther ahead, some are just coming to the party, but there's no one in the system that doesn't doubt the need to better understand the data, better understand the different use cases. And then that enables you to use other capabilities, which are, whether you think about the broader definition of AI, which is today mostly LLMs is what's being used in the credit union space, but there's some really cool use cases, but you can't do that until you have foundational building blocks. And I think that's the area that is perhaps the most frustrating for credit unions is you see all these really, really cool things. And it's not to say you can't test and learn, but it does require a massive amount of work on fundamentals. Those fundamentals enable you to do the other cool things. And that's how I've been thinking about them at Travis is absolutely, I want to compete with the national banks, and we can do so. But I need to get there in a uniquely Travis way, and that's going to require us to have a different path than many others.
I think that was really helpful, Kevin. So the last one was really helpful. Let's move on to that one problem, right? That you want to solve for. Now, obviously, you don't have a magic wand to solve every problem, but if there is just one problem you want to solve for right now, what would that be?
Yeah, great question. For me, um, I had the benefit before joining a credit union of understanding where they fit in the marketplace. And I think one of the questions that often comes up is, and I hear this when I'm with my peer group, we do so much good. Every credit union does outstanding work in their respective communities, whether that's specific member segments, it's specific community needs. And I think the thing that credit unions struggle with the most is how does that message propagate in a way so that credit unions get their fair share of the end consumer or future members up for grab. If you look at the US financial services system today, 80% of the new households end up at a national bank. And today it's actually a little bit more bifurcated. It's the middle market and above, so mass market and above, is predominantly going to the national banks. And then the bottom half, or the below the mass market, is going to typically the neobanks.
Yeah.
And credit unions have maintained their overall share, respectively, some growth, but not massive growth. And I think the thing that everyone's trying to figure out is, how do you make sure that we deliver on our mission, but also make sure that when people are thinking about their next financial institution, we're top of mind, both individually as Travis Credit Union, but also, if not us, is there another great credit union in your community that's doing outstanding work? Because when you're having a relationship with Travis, that money is staying in the communities we operate in, right? So when we do 50% of all loans and 50% of all residential loans at Travis in Q1, we're to low to moderate income communities, right? That has a meaningful impact around, you can still get all the capabilities you want of a national player, but that money is local. And I think, to me, that question for us is just, how do we continue to make sure we're top of mind? How do we win those new relationship at bats? That's specific to Travis, but also I hear that from most of my peers in the credit union system.
I think that's a difference, right, Kevin? I mean, I'm not naming large institutions, but if I talk to a large institution exec, they'll talk about, if not mine, you can also think about my competitors. I mean, Wall Street does not work that way, right? It's very different. But
Yeah.
the mindset that you have, or we have in the community, that we are doing actually to serve the community, right? And if not Travis, it's fine. It can another credit union, but let the money stay within the community, right? Not just siphon it outside. So that I think that's a huge difference that even also has drawn me to stay back with credit unions, right? So yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
understand that one problem that you want to solve.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing that, I've worked now at this point in the think about financial services, the predominant, all the verticals of a consumer and business organization, right? So national,
Yeah.
regional, fintech, and then a credit union.
Yeah.
It's a very large tent, and there is room for everybody. I think people often confuse this animosity between the two. So I think about some of the communities we serve. In one of the primary areas we concern, using the Economic Development Corporation, we did a partnership to help a small business growth fund. And that was a partnership between the Economic Development Organization, two credit unions, one of which were Travis, and a local community bank. So again, people confuse often as if it's a animosity between the two. There are more than enough Americans with fundamental needs that I am pretty sure we can all grow, take care of our members, and take care of our communities, and everyone's going to be just fine.
Oh, yes. I mean, wish the world would think in this way, the way how we think in the creative ecosystem, the world would have been a better place. Uh, Absolutely. This is amazing. Uh, Dovetailing on to some things that keep you awake at night. Obviously, there are like 500 things that keep us awake at night, but what are the top three things that actually keep you awake at night, and what do you do with them?
Yeah. So for me, I think it's just the pace of things. So meaning, we know where we are today. We've made huge growth at Travis. We've done a great work on promoting existing talent, bringing in new talent, doing a ton of work on processes, making meaningful investments in capabilities for our members. Our net promoter score, meaningfully up over the last couple of years. The challenge I think all leaders face is there is the world around you, which seems to be moving at a faster and faster pace. And yet that pace for your organization is very difficult to keep up with, which means scarcity wins the game. You can't
Yep.
do all things at all times. And so for me, the hardest thing is having incredibly high ambitions, but being very comfortable that it might take longer than I would like for us to get there. And it's the mental game of how do you balance those things? So how do you push really hard, but celebrate the successes? And how do you just make sure you continue to move in that direction? Because otherwise the risk is, it's the risk of shiny objects. Chase
Yep.
this, chase that, this tomorrow. And the reality is that distraction degrades your ability to serve your members. And so I can't overemphasize the kind of that interesting balance that you have to find. And there is no perfect answer. It's just going to be uniquely different based on the leader. So I have a specific style. It's going to be different based on the organization. But for me, it's that the dual existence of, I like to think about anything you're trying to do is you have the thing you're trying to improve. So it's kind of, and then you have the thing that you want to maintain. And that natural tension is super helpful in driving great outcomes. So I want to grow members, but I want to make sure my net promoter score keeps going up, or I want to maintain operational expense discipline. You're always operating these dualities. It's the same for, wow, the world's moving quicker. We've got a lot of things to do. And that can really kind of, early in the morning is when my brain is the most active. And so how do you find that balance of, so how do I do it?
Yep.
I measure progress. I write down those things that are on my mind, and then we just chunk them off. We've addressed this, we've addressed that. It's not a perfect answer, and some days I'm really great at managing it, and some days I'm not.
I can understand, Kevin. So this is how a leader talks about running the organization. It's amazing. Uh, One last question about growth. You emphasized on growth, and since both of us both of us share the similar mindset. We are growth-oriented folks, right? I mean, we want to grow. We want institutions to grow, but not at the cost of doing an unethical thing. We want to be very ethical. We want to give back to the community. We want to do what is right for the people, what's right for our members. So, according to you, so what is your growth strategy right now? So, what are your leading products? What do you think that the growth strategy will look like for Travis in the next couple of years? I mean, I know it's a difficult question, it's very strategic, but still,
Yeah.
what do you think?
Yep. So I'd say a couple of thoughts on this. So the first
Mm-hmm.
is our mission's been relatively the same for many years. It's really kind of enabling members to basically, have financial success. We think about then the next kind of circular of the Venn diagram rim is our job is to being a top or a top consideration for consumers and businesses. And then we measure everything we do, we put them in three pillars. Are we enhancing the compelling value that we offer our members?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do we have basically highly engaged and talented talent?
Mm-hmm.
And then how do we think about operational excellence? And so everything we're doing is making investments, whether it be people, process, or technology, on those
Yep.
three pillars. And then we measure them against as all organizations do, a balanced scorecard, which is exactly to your point. I want to see growth, but I want to see it in a risk-prudent way. And so we're constantly, based on the economic environment, the challenges ahead. So then to your broader question, what we've really focused on is, at the end of the day, what we hear from members is product-only conversations. Our members think about they need a solution. You can think about the jobs to be done framework. So yes, we offer all of the products and capabilities for all of our members. What we've been leaning into more, while product is a component of it, is knowledge. So if
Yep.
we give our members confidence in understanding their finances, then regardless of that situation, they will have the right tools to manage their life, and that enables us to deliver on our mission. So we've been thinking more about each product should deliver insight. The insight should drive competency. And so we use the tagline, knowledge is power. But it's all about this connectivity. So yes, we have the products, we have the services, but in essence, what we hear from our members is, don't start a conversation with me if I'm on the phone or I'm in the branch with, How about a checking account? What they want to hear is, hey, looks like you're going to need a medium to have access to your funds. How
Yep,
often do you need them? If
yep,
daily, we
yep,
call it a checking account in the US. So
yep, yep.
again, it's imperfect and we're early in our journey in this evolution, but that's really trying based on voice of the member. So what we're trying to better triangulate is, do we help them understand their finances today? Do we help in those sometimes awkward conversations? Do we show up in a way that you feel like you're respected, you're heard, and that you've got someone there to help you work through that? And if we do that, you will win membership for life, right? And so that's kind of how we've been thinking about this while we're making all these other capability components of, new platforms and new tools. But ultimately, when you ask the member what they're really looking for is, do you know who I am? Do you respect me? And are you helping me make good decisions? If so, they reward you with loyalty. If not, they have 6,000 other options in the US.
I mean, you're exactly the friend I should have. This was amazing, right? I mean, having 6,000 other options which do not value your members. I mean, I'll give an example, right? I mean, I'm not naming our credit union, but I do not own a mortgage right now. But I get a campaign that talks about HELOC. I'm like, guys, do you even know who I am? That's a basic challenge that even I feel for a financial institution. I'm not talking about hyper personalized glossy things. I'm talking about basics. Get your basics fixed, know who I am, and then maybe let's have a conversation. Then I'll decide where do I park my money. Is it like your savings account or a high yield savings account somewhere else? So absolutely, Kevin. This was amazing. This conversation was amazing, and thank you, sir, for taking your time out today to chat with me while I was on Uber. So I really appreciate it.